Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, seventh grade. This is our slide presentation for today, and we'll be talking about how Texas moves ahead in the 1920s. So, actually starts in 1880 and goes to 1920. But before we can do that, we have to answer our questions. If you watch CNN 10, what's tracking you? It's something a lot of you have. And then our slide presentation question: what group of Texans were in the Spanish-American War? They had a special name. So we're going to start with James Hogg. He was governor from 1891 to 1895. Although it's just one term, the man was incredible of what he did while he was in office. Some facts about him: he's the first governor to be born in Texas. He had 4 children, one named Ima. Sometimes you'll hear people say that he had 2 daughters, Ima and Ura. Ima Hogg, Ura Hogg. But that's wrong. There was no Ura. And Ima was actually named after a poem his brother wrote, Thomas Hogg. And so it wasn't really a joke. Okay? But what he did was he kind of put the cap on big business in Texas by starting a railroad commission, putting the railroad commission in place. And the Railroad Commission regulated timber, oil, and railroads, and it still does today. So timber, let's talk about timber. A lot of people were making a lot of money in Texas off of timber, and so the Brotherhood of Timber Workers worked for better wages and shorter working days. So a 12-hour day was nothing for a lumberjack in Texas, and they were trying to get it down to 8. Eventually got it down to 10 hours, and then eventually to 8. The other group that worked in Texas was the Texas Forestry Association, because these lumberjacks were literally wiping out all the forests in Texas. And so the association kept people from overforesting Texas. And so that's why we have the political cartoon of saying drop him hard, because the fat cats own all the money. Farming in Texas was reformed by local and state groups. It wasn't reformed by a government agency, and that agency that did reform or tried to help reform farming was the Grange. Now, you sometimes hear about the Grange in movies and stuff as the bad guy, but what the Grange tried to do is regulate ranching and farming so that everybody had an equal shot. They tried to get rid of tenant farms, and they tried to get rid of sharecropping, which they did not have too much luck with. The other thing about farming in Texas, we actually had a Texas A&M, which was founded to make farming more scientific. A big reform in Texas was the women's right to vote, which is called suffrage. So there was a lady by the name of Annette Finnegan. Her and her sisters organized the Houston Equal Suffrage League, and later the Texas Equal Suffrage League. A huge mover and shaker in women's right to vote was Jane McCallum, who was the vice president of the League of Women Voters, but she went from city to city, town to town, giving speeches and writing newspaper articles about women's right to vote. Governor William P. Hobby, in 1918 signed the bill allowing women to vote. Now, this was ahead of the national movement, which was the next year, 1919, but we were ahead in letting women have the right to vote. And Texas was the first state to vote for the amendment to allow women the right to vote. Some great changes happened with Texas. William P. Hobby realized that Texas was paying a lot of money. Well, that schools were paying a lot of money for textbooks. So he started textbook depositories, and he actually gave Texas schools free textbooks. Also, there was prison reform during this time. Healthcare was improved, and then prohibition was approved. Now, prohibition is no selling or consuming of alcoholic beverages. And a lot of people at the time felt that a lot of men were neglecting their families just to go off and drink. And probably was true. I put in the campaign ad for voting for William Hobby for governor, and I wanted you to notice that he, he talks about having women vote for um, their disenfranchised soldier boy and prohibition. He brags about prohibition, but he also protected Texas girls by raising the age of consent from 15 to 17. So, he was quite a reformer in his day.